The morning felt almost unreal, like the world had conspired to make everything perfect. The sun was soft and golden, pouring through the chapel windows like honey. I could hear the flower girls giggling, dropping petals too early and laughing as they ran barefoot across the stone path. Guests were arriving, dressed in joy. The garden smelled like roses and expensive perfume, and for a moment, it was everything a mother could dream of. I stood in the corner of the bridal suite pretending to check my phone, but really, I was watching Isabel in the mirror. My daughter. My heart outside my body. She looked breathtaking, elegant, glowing, so full of hope. I smiled when she caught my eye, and she smiled back, but I had to look away. There were tears forming, not just of pride. No, this was something heavier, something I had carried for far too long. Today was her wedding day. But in a strange way, it was mine too. My moment. Not to make a scene, but to finally make peace. I'd waited so many years for this day, not just to see Isabel walk down the aisle, but to finally exhale, to finally stop pretending. And yet, here I was, zipping her dress, fastening her bracelet, the one Michael gave me years ago when I still believed he was the man I married. People kept coming up to me, hugging me, saying things like, "You must be so proud," or, "You look radiant, Laura." And I nodded, smiled, thanked them all, gracious, polished, exactly who they expected me to be. No one saw the way my hands trembled slightly when I reached for a glass of water. No one noticed how tightly I held my clutch, as if it were the only thing keeping me grounded in that room full of laughter and lace. Michael walked in briefly to check on Isabel. Of course, everyone greeted him like he was the hero of the hour. Charming, composed, so effortlessly admired. And I stood there beside him, the perfect picture of an enduring marriage. I even laughed when he told one of his usual dad jokes, the ones that always made Isabel roll her eyes. But inside? Inside, I felt the cold grip of memory tightening around my spine. Because 20 years ago, I stood in front of a mirror too, swollen with pregnancy, heart cracked open, while Michael whispered apologies into a silence he'd created. He broke me then, and I never told anyone. I never ruined his image. I held it all in. For Isabel, for appearances. But watching her today, so beautiful, so unaware of the storm that shaped our lives, it reminded me exactly why I came here with more than just a smile. I kept glancing at the time, not because anything was running late, but because I could feel it coming. The shift. The moment I had been rehearsing in my head for years. And yet, I wasn't nervous. Oddly enough, I felt calm. There's a strange kind of peace in knowing your truth has waited long enough. It doesn't scream anymore. It just waits to be heard. And today, I had no intention of silencing it. Isabel turned to me just before the ceremony, eyes wide with excitement, hands trembling slightly as she held her bouquet. "Do I look okay, Mom?" she asked. And I nearly lost it, because she looked more than okay. She looked like everything I had ever fought for. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "You look like the best part of my life." And I meant it with every cell in my body. That moment will stay with me forever. As the music began and everyone stood for the bride, I stepped back and let the world focus on her. All eyes on Isabel. Just as they should be. But inside me, something had quietly shifted. Today wasn't just about love and promises. Not for me. It was about a different kind of vow. One I made long ago. One I never said out loud, but never took back either. It happened during the 3rd trimester. I remember because I had just painted the nursery walls a soft green, hoping it would calm the baby. I was waddling around with swollen ankles and a back that felt like it had given up on me. I should have been resting, but instead I was doing laundry when I found the first clue. A receipt, crumpled inside his jacket pocket from a hotel not far from his office. At first, I thought it must have been a business thing. I wanted to believe that. But then came the voicemail. Her voice, smooth, rehearsed, too comfortable with him. She called him Babe. Thanked him for the necklace. I remember standing there in the kitchen, holding my belly with one hand and the phone with the other, feeling my whole world collapse in complete silence. That kind of betrayal? It doesn't come with screaming. It comes with stillness. Cold, sharp, paralyzing stillness. I never told anyone. Not my mother, not my sister, not my best friend. I buried it. I smiled through baby showers and family dinners. I let Michael hold my hand during labor. And the entire time, he thought I didn't know. But I did. I knew everything. I kept the emails, the letters, the photos she sent him. I even kept the voicemail, every detail. I held on to it like armor, like proof that I wasn't crazy, that I hadn't imagined the hollowness he left behind. When she left him, yes, she ended it, not him, Michael came crawling back like a man freshly baptized in guilt. He wept. He begged. He wrapped himself in shame like it could undo what he'd done. And I stood there, holding our newborn daughter in my arms. And I listened. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just looked at him and realized how little I truly knew the man I'd married. How little he deserved the family I built around him. He said it was a mistake, that it meant nothing, that it would never happen again. And maybe he believed that. Maybe he thought words could stitch up what he'd torn. I stayed. Not because I forgave him. I didn't. Not because I forgot. I never did. I stayed for Isabel. For the version of her childhood that didn't include custody arrangements and weekend visits. For the birthday parties, the school plays, the Christmas mornings. I gave her stability, even if it cost me my own. But in the back of my mind, I made a promise. A quiet, dangerous vow. That one day he would know what it felt like. To have something beautiful, something sacred, ruined by the very person who was supposed to protect it. I didn't know when, I didn't know how, but I knew it would come. Some truths don't die in silence. They wait. And mine had been waiting for 20 years. There were days when I almost convinced myself to let it go. Days when Michael would make Isabel laugh so hard she'd fall off the couch, or when he'd kiss me on the cheek before dinner like nothing had ever happened. And I'd think, maybe this is enough. Maybe I can live with the lie, as long as it keeps her world intact. But then I'd open that old wooden box at the back of my closet. And there it was. The printed emails, the photos, the voicemail burned onto a CD. My reality. My fuel. I became an expert at pretending. The supportive wife at office parties. The one who laughed at his stories, toasted his promotions, stood beside him in Christmas cards. Everyone thought we were solid, strong, unshakable. What a cruel kind of talent. To perform love in front of an audience that had no idea they were watching a play. I perfected it. But the truth? It never left me. It lived beneath my ribs, quiet and constant, like a second heartbeat. And over the years, I watched Michael build his reputation. He became the man people admired, dependable, successful, the family man. I watched him accept praise for being a husband he never truly was. And each time I tucked away the anger, the ache, the betrayal, saving it. Not out of bitterness, out of purpose. Because I knew the day would come when the mask would fall, and I wouldn't have to lift a single finger to tear it off. I'd only have to open my mouth. Weddings have a way of pulling people into a dream. That day, I let myself drift with them, floating from table to table, kissing cheeks, clinking glasses, smiling for photos. Everyone kept saying how happy I looked, how radiant. And I suppose I was. But not for the reasons they thought. This wasn't just joy. It was release. It was the weight lifting, moment by moment, as I got closer to what I came here to do. I made sure Isabel's day stayed untouched. She deserved that. Every moment of it. The beauty, the magic, the love, all hers. I laughed with her bridesmaids, danced with my cousins, threw my head back during the toast to the couple. I didn't fake a single second. I meant it. Because none of this was about revenge against her. I would never let the truth become her punishment. No, this was something else, something far more precise. Michael watched me a few times from across the room. I caught the way his eyes lingered, slightly puzzled, maybe even a little hopeful. He must have thought I'd finally let it go. All of it. That this was some unspoken truce, sealed with white wine and polite smiles. Poor man. He never could read me as well as he thought. And today, that would become painfully clear. As the evening wore on, the lights softened and the music slowed. People were settling into their seats again, waiting for the speeches. Isabel leaned her head on her new husband's shoulder, glowing in that effortless way only a bride can. I stood near the back of the room, hands folded calmly, my heart steady. This was the part of the night everyone had been waiting for, when the father of the bride would raise his glass and charm the room with a few sentimental lines. They called his name. Michael stood up, straightening his jacket with that same practiced confidence he always wore like a second skin. I watched the corners of his mouth curl, his hand brushing Isabel's shoulder as he made his way to the mic. He didn't see me moving. Not at first. Not until I reached the edge of the dance floor, lifted my hand slightly and said, clearly, gently, "Before we hear from the man of the hour, I'd like to say a few words." The room fell into a hush. Conversations cut mid-sentence. A few guests chuckled awkwardly, expecting a cute motherly moment, maybe a joke or a blessing. Michael paused, unsure, but he stepped aside. He had to. And as I stepped forward, I felt nothing but clarity. I didn't need notes. I didn't need permission. I only needed my voice. And after 2 decades, it had never been steadier. I looked out at the sea of faces, family, friends, people who had watched our lives from the outside and believed they knew our story. I gave them a warm smile, the kind that disarms people before the truth hits. Then I turned my eyes to Isabel, her bouquet resting in her lap, her smile still sweet, still unaware. That was the hardest part, knowing I was about to shift her world. But I also knew I wasn't shattering it. I was setting it free. I began softly, the way mothers do when they speak from the heart. I talked about Isabel, her strength, her kindness, the way she always saw the best in people. I spoke of motherhood, of love, of the promises we make and the weight they carry. And then, slowly, my voice changed. Not louder, just deeper, calmer, as if the truth had waited patiently for its turn, and now, it had the floor. "There's something about vows," I said. "When they're broken, they don't just vanish. Sometimes they wait." I didn't look at Michael. I didn't have to. I could feel him stiffen, his breath catching. I reached into my clutch and wrapped my fingers around the envelope I had sealed the night before. The room, once full of champagne and music, now held something else entirely. Silence. And in that silence, I took the first step toward the altar of truth. My hands didn't shake, not even a little. I unfolded the envelope slowly, letting the paper breathe as if it had been holding its own kind of tension all these years. People leaned forward in their seats, some smiling politely, others shifting uneasily. Michael took a step toward me, whispering something under his breath. I didn't even hear it. I didn't need to. I raised my hand gently and said without turning, "Not now." He froze. I looked at Isabel. Her brows had drawn together, just slightly. Still calm. Still open. I had to begin with her. "Isabel," I said, "you are the strongest woman I know, not because of what you've done, but because of who you've always been. You lead with your heart, even when others don't deserve it. That is your power." I could feel her holding her breath now. She knew something was coming, but not what. Not yet. Then I turned to the crowd, holding the envelope delicately in my hand like it was something sacred. We talk a lot about love at weddings, about promises, vows, and forever. But we rarely talk about what happens when those vows are broken, when the truth gets buried under time and appearances. Tonight, I want to show you something. Not to cause pain, but to release it. Because some truths deserve to walk in the light. I reached into the envelope and pulled out the first page. A printed email, dated exactly 2 months before Isabel was born. I held it up, but I didn't need to read it aloud. I wanted them to see it. His name. Her name. The subject line that read, "Last night was perfect." A ripple moved through the room. Someone gasped quietly. Another shifted in their chair. But I stayed steady, eyes on the truth, not the noise. Then came the photos. Just a few, carefully chosen. Smiling faces in hotel bars. A selfie in his office. The same one where he used to take conference calls while I napped, swollen and exhausted with our unborn child. I didn't wave them around or point fingers. I let the images speak, each one a quiet hammer tapping at the porcelain mask Michael had worn for decades. I could feel the weight of eyes shifting toward him. And still, I didn't look at him once. Michael stepped forward, his voice low, urgent. "Laura, don't do this." But I turned to him finally and met his eyes with something stronger than rage. It was peace. The kind that comes after years of carrying someone else's secret. I said it clearly, not loud, just enough for everyone to hear. "You gave me pain on the day our daughter was born. I give you truth on the day she becomes a wife." And then I stepped back. For a moment, no one moved. No one breathed. It was as if the entire room had been dipped in glass. Fragile, frozen, full of reflection. I looked at Isabel again. Her face had gone pale, her fingers curled around the edge of her chair. She wasn't crying, not yet. But her eyes were searching. Not for the truth. She had just received that. She was searching for her foundation, and realizing it wasn't what she thought. Michael stood frozen, somewhere between shame and panic. His hands clenched at his sides like a man trying to hold on to something that had already slipped through. I didn't flinch. I didn't need to say more. I had said what mattered. After all these years, I hadn't raised my voice or thrown anything. I had simply peeled the mask off, slowly, gently, and let him meet the man underneath it. Not in private, not in secrecy, but in front of everyone who once applauded him. And with that, I turned to the crowd and nodded politely. "Thank you," I said, as if I'd just delivered a toast. I walked away from the microphone, past the stunned faces and clutched pearls, past Michael, whose eyes followed me like he was watching his own legend crumble. I walked straight to Isabel and took her hands. She didn't pull away. She just held on, and I held her back. The rest, I knew, would unfold on its own. I didn't stay for the questions, or the apologies, or the whispers that grew louder as the shock settled into curiosity. I kissed Isabel's forehead, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear like I had done 1,000 times since she was a baby, and I said softly, "Now you're free. And so am I." Then I stepped away from the noise and into the night air. It was cooler than before, a breeze finally breaking through the weight of the day. Michael was gone before the cake had even been cut. Not by choice. Isabel asked someone, quietly, firmly, to escort him out. No scene, no shouting. just the quiet unraveling of a man who had built his comfort on someone else's silence. I imagine he never thought it would come to this, that I would ever say it out loud. But the thing about secrets is, they don't stay buried. Not when the person holding them finally decides to breathe. The party carried on, a little quieter, a little more aware. Some people left early. Others stayed and danced, trying to reclaim the night. I don't blame them. Life doesn't stop for the truth. It makes space for it. I watched Isabel from a distance once more. Her smile wasn't the same. It was smaller, tighter, but it was real. She knew now. She saw. And strangely, I think part of her felt relieved too, like a fog had lifted. In the days that followed, the story spread faster than I ever could have imagined. Some people called me brave. Others whispered that I was cruel. But no one, not one person, ignored it. That was never the goal anyway. I didn't do it for applause or revenge. I did it because silence was starting to rot me from the inside. And because the version of love we pretend into existence doesn't protect anyone, it only delays the fallout. Michael tried to explain himself, of course. Reached out to mutual friends, even made a post online about forgiveness and personal growth. It read like a man trying to outrun a shadow he'd finally seen in daylight. But words don't weigh the same when truth has already taken the stage. People listened, politely. Then they looked away. Because deep down they knew. The damage was never in the confession. It was in the years it was withheld. As for me, I didn't answer the calls. I didn't check the comments. I booked a train ticket. I packed light. Just a small suitcase, a pair of worn sandals, and my passport. For the first time in years, I looked at myself in the mirror and saw someone becoming again. Not surviving, not pretending, just becoming. And that feeling, it was worth every second of the 20 years it took to get here. I traveled for weeks. No real plan, just a list of places I'd once circled in guidebooks and told myself I'd visit someday. I drank coffee by the sea in a quiet village where no one knew my name. I read entire novels without checking my phone. I let the days stretch, slow and soft, and learned the sound of my own thoughts without anyone else's voice layered over them. And for the first time in 2 decades, I laughed without thinking about who was watching. Isabel and I spoke often. Our conversations were different now, more open, more grown. She told me she was proud of me. That she was grieving in her own way, not just for the truth, but for the version of her father she had to let go of. I told her that was okay. That we could love someone and still admit they hurt us. That we could move forward without dragging the weight of what they did behind us. And she understood. She really did. Now, when people ask me if I regret doing it, speaking the truth, breaking the illusion, I smile. Because I know the cost of silence. I lived it. I wore it like a second skin for 20 years. And I also know the power of saying what needs to be said. Some vows are broken in secret. Others? They're broken out loud, so they echo forever.